IVM.
Hello and welcome to Getting Meta. This is episode 0, sort of like a prologue to the series, sort of like what to expect and a little bit more about the show and why I decided to start it. So I've been freelancing for close to 2 years at the time I first started doing interviews for the show, and while I've always been interested in some aspects of productivity before, I found myself thinking about this a lot more when I became my own boss and my own employee. And I obviously looked at what others were doing, people I admired, but the more I thought about it, I realized it was less about replicating specific habits and more about asking yourself more fundamental questions to help you build your own habits and frameworks, or introspecting enough to arrive at your own unique goals. This way, I realized you could take a mental model from anyone, regardless of which field they were in, and apply it to your own life. And that's really where the idea of this show was sparked. Could I speak to smart, intelligent, productive people and eke out their habits, tools, models, and all that so that anyone else could apply it in their own lives, be it personal, professional, side hustle, anything at all. As such, I do consider this a productivity podcast, but that's only because it can't cleanly be classified into something else. But more than anything, I hope it encourages each listener to find what works for them rather than follow a prescription. So if you're looking for quick fixes and surefire plug-and-play solutions, 5 things to make you more productive, you won't find them over here. Because this show will really ask you to do more than that. It'll hopefully get you to think of yourself and ask hard questions about what you want to do. Now, I'm not an expert at productivity myself, but in many ways that makes me ideally placed to do this show. I'm very much trying different things myself, and I've learned so much from each of these interviews that you yourself are about to hear. I'm going to be speaking to a very wide range of people during the first season of Getting Meta. I'll be speaking to writers, comedians, entrepreneurs, and even some people who don't necessarily put themselves out there, but whose way of living I just admire. From each interview, I think there's something different to learn, and hey, if nothing else, you get a fantastic rabbit hole of content and references to enjoy. The reason I've chosen the people that I have is not just because of their achievements, but how they got there, like their way of thinking. The show really is less about what they did and more about, like how they did it. What were they thinking? What were the questions they asked of themselves? What are the goals they set for themselves and how they changed? Hence, getting meta with them. Each show is going to have loads of anecdotes, recommendations, and some things that they've actually never spoken to anyone else about. This isn't a boast really, it's just an outcome of speaking to the person rather than the achievements, which is really what I wanted to do on this show. As a result, it also ends up being a little more personal than the average interview, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I sincerely thank all the guests who appeared on this show for their time. I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I did putting it together. Next week in your feeds will be episode 1 with Amit Verma, the brains and voice behind the seen and the unseen, probably India's finest podcast, and I couldn't have imagined a better guest to start this show with. You'll also hear on that interview how the name of this particular podcast, Getting Meta, came about. Well, I think that's enough for a prologue, really. It's been long enough. I'll be in your ears next week. In case you're not already subscribed to the show, I'd love it if you would, because I do think that the benefit of the show will be accretive rather than listening to individual episodes. You can find Getting Meta on any podcasting app of your choice. All links are given in the show notes, of course. And I'd love to know what you think. You can reach me on Twitter, Instagram, email. All those links are in the show notes as well. Thank you once again for giving Getting Meta a listen, and I hope to see you back next week with the actual episode 1.